kind of back to my first question with that tech mentality of dealing with kind of traditional legacy insurance industries and that corporation versus kind of the leaner, nimble. So maybe around, love to hear any great stories, but any advice around, and Alex, I'll start with you, working with carriers, working with some of these more traditional corporations where communication might not always be the easiest. Just some of your thoughts on, and maybe advice to people new to the insurtech space.
Go find a partner who's got experience working with carriers and convince them to be your co-founder.
Great advice.
And don't balk at the sticker price. Figure out how to get aligned on the vision of what you want to do, and recognize you're saving years of time by bringing in someone that knows how to work with carriers. Now, you want to bring someone in that appreciates and loves technology too. So it's not a silver bullet, but that's what I'd say. I could also write a 400-page book on how to work with the NS carriers. So I'll stop there.
And John, having experience on both sides of it, insurtech and traditional carriers, kind of advice to people new to the insurtech space, dealing with some of those legacy industries and more corporation mentality, to be kind about it.
Yeah, I think two things. One, I would 100% agree with Alex, and find that person who also has the ability to think creatively and know where you can push and perhaps where it's going to be really difficult to push. So what you don't want is somebody who's going to come in and say, well, I'm going to build it the way we built it at the other carrier. They know their expertise is such that they can say, hey, I'm going to take this 20% from the traditional approach, but 80% of it's going to be brand new. So the short version is 100% agree with Alex on that. I do think getting that expertise is helpful and important. Just make sure you've got somebody who's creative and can flex their thinking. The flip side, actually, same would go for product. Somebody who comes from a pure SaaS background and is going to do it exactly the way it's done at a SaaS company, that's not going to work either. So it's a two-way street there. You got to have both sides come together and be thinking creatively and flexibly. So the last thing I'll say on this, and this took me longer than I like to admit to figure out, but when you come together and some of those individuals from traditional insurance, they probably have some agile experience, but probably have been more exposed to a waterfall approach on things. Obviously, you want to do things whenever possible in an agile fashion. What took me a while to realize is that the differences were less about an agile approach and whether or not it made sense when you take the traditional insurance person and perhaps the traditional SaaS person. Well, the main difference is I've gone through this a number of times and seen friction in that process. The main difference is usually the definition of what is an MVP. So my point with this is be clear on that. When you're working on something, spend time defining what is minimally needed to launch this product or solution. In the traditional insurance, the very extreme traditional insurance person will say, well, everything's got to be perfect. It's all got to be buttoned up, right? And at the other end of the spectrum, somebody who doesn't know what they don't know might say, well, I don't care if the forms are right or the rating's not right. Well, that doesn't work either. So long-winded way of saying spend time on defining the MVP. I think it helps avoid a lot of friction. That took me a while to figure out, but once I did, I think we're able to minimize a lot more friction in those discussions between engineers and traditional insurance.
Yeah, thanks. And Jen, I'm wondering if you have thoughts. I know you typically aren't dealing in the same manner that our other two panelists are with some of these legacy carriers, but
I mean, we are, though, in some ways, and something that I would echo both of those. You can't be successful in this space without someone on your team who has deep experience and that flexible mindset of a passion to move it forward. But what I would say, one thing that we talk about a lot here is really leaning into your curiosity and discomfort around this stuff. If you take a hard line, either to John's point, a hard line on the tech side or a hard line on the insurance side, we're probably not going to get to the right answer for a customer. If you assume a customer is legacy and slow and they just don't know what they're doing, you're wrong. They know what they're doing. They're doing it that way for a variety of reasons. There are a bunch of constraints that also put them in that situation. So really working to be curious about what the customer is trying to solve, what is the underlying challenge, not casting judgment, are really just really important mental exercise, I think, for humans generally. But in this space in particular, it can be incredibly easy to mentally shortcut. Oh, I don't agree with that. It shouldn't work that way, or they're doing it wrong, or they're making it overly complicated. And that was a thing for me early on, to really be comfortable with the fact that like I was going to come up with a design, and then I was going to find out that the state of Georgia did it differently, and I was going to have to throw away part of that design. And I can be as frustrated as I want with the state of Georgia or the state of Colorado or whatever. But that's the reality, and that it's fluid and it's going to change. So a curiosity and a respect for the complexity of the space gives us the opportunity to do those challenge moments and move things forward in a respectful way. But if we don't have that, we're going to make missteps. And then I think the other thing on this is just patience, right? We kind of talk about here, it's not if, it's when. I really do believe, and we've seen this with a lot of our customers, there are an incredible number of people in this space who are passionate about improving it. And they're in the carriers. We say, oh, they move so slow, they move this out. And it's true, they do. But there will be champions kind of everywhere that you look, if you know how to look for them and support them. And so figuring out how to lift up those voices, and even if it takes 2 years or 3 years on a deal, that can be a huge win for that company and the industry if we can help people move through it. So I'd say curiosity and patience are kind of big ones in our world.